I just love the sound of those pitter-pat feet running up and down the aisles. So a couple of weeks ago, I officiated at a wedding. And at the reception, the wedding party sat at the head table. Elise, do we have that picture here? Okay, so it's hard to see the head table, but it's beyond these people. And I didn't know that I was going to be using this photo as a sermon illustration. I was using it because I thought it was so gorgeous with the windows behind there. So I didn't actually take a picture of the wedding party at the table. But just imagine. So the table is kind of behind these people seated here. So back here, at the front of where everyone is looking. So the wedding party sat at the head table. And they had carefully determined the seating chart for where everyone would sit, particularly the prickly relationships in the bride's family, where the bride's mother and father had divorced some years prior, and her father had remarried 3 years before, and this was the first time for her mother and her stepmother to meet. So she carefully decided where all of those people were going to sit, but also everyone else. Now, I was sitting at table number 5. We have that picture, Elise? Aha, there. Number 5.
You mean the photo case?
And I was sitting with all the boyfriends and girlfriends of the people in the wedding party. Yes. The people where they were cast-offs because their boyfriends and girlfriends were like groomsmen or bridesmaids. Yeah. So they didn't make the cut for the head table. So they got to sit with me.
Oh.
Or maybe I got to sit with them. I don't know. So this is what James and John, they're talking about, these sons of Zebedee. When they're talking about, Jesus, can we sit at your right hand or your left hand? They're basically talking, can we sit at the head table? When you come into your glory, can we sit at the head table and sit at your right and your left? Basically, they're proving to everyone that they're missing the point. Where Mark has placed this story in his gospel is very important. And it just makes this nothing short of mortally embarrassing for James and John as we listen to all of this. And for us to look at this and listen to this story and go, oh, James, John, please. So last week we looked at the story of the wealthy man. And he asked, what do I do to obtain eternal life? He asked Jesus this question. And Jesus says, sell all you own and give the money to the poor. And the man was like, I can't do that. So obviously this is not exactly, this walk with Jesus is not exactly a life of prestige. It's not exactly a life of a head table with seats to the right or the left. Jesus. And in that story, Peter shores himself up to say, well, me and the other disciples, look, we've given everything up and we followed you. We've done this, perhaps in an attempt of false piety, to say, I want to make myself look good, so I'm going to say that I'm weak. I'm weak and meek, in order to really make myself look good. So I'm a good follower of Jesus because I'm meek and mild. Again, the ways we try to look strong and even prestigious. Now the very next bit in Mark's gospel, so you got the wealthy man who can't quite pull it off. The very next bit in Mark's gospel is Jesus predicting his death and resurrection. And he says these kinds of things. Actually, he says exactly this. They will ridicule him, they'll ridicule me, spit on me, torture me, and kill me. And then he says, and then after 3 days, I'll rise up. Now these sons of Zebedee indeed seem to be missing the point. The point about the ridicule and the torture and the death. They kind of latch on to that rise again piece and skip all the other. Again, this is not exactly a life of prestige, and it's not a death of dignity. One should hardly aspire for the seat of honor in this life, the best of class in this life of disdain and disgrace. But we shouldn't be quick to snub our noses or look down upon these sons of Zebedee, for we do like our seating charts. It starts early in our lives. In kindergarten, the teacher will name the line leader for the day, sometimes even for a whole week. And it's so exciting when we get to be the line leader. We're first in line, which allows us to choose the best seat in the lunchroom.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
And so it's just so exciting to be the line leader. And then other times in those elementary classrooms, in order to practice classroom management, which is so hard in elementary school. But sometimes a teacher is forced to put the naughty kid, put the desk right next to her desk in order to try to keep that kid in line. But again, that seating chart puts the naughty kid right there. That right or that left to the seat of the teacher's not exactly that great. In fact, you walk in the door and you're like, oh, that's that kid. Or maybe restaurants. We have fine dining restaurants where you actually have a tablecloth on the table. You have real silverware, glasses and plates, nice stuff, maybe even flower arrangement on the table. And then you have McDonald's, where at the end of the meal, where you've eaten off of paper, plastic, whatever, you yourself gather up everything on the table, put it on your little tray, and you walk to the trash can and throw everything away. Trying not to put the tray in there, put the tray up on the table. Some can afford to eat at the fine dining places all the time. Some of us can eat at the fine dining place every once in a while, but eat at McDonald's most of the time. And then some people just eat at McDonald's all the time, and they never get to eat at the fine dining.
Eat at home.
And then there are some seating charts that are extremely harmful to people. In 1997, I was at Duke University at the Divinity School. And I lived on East Campus, but the school was on West Campus. And there's a mile, exactly a mile, in between the two schools, the two campuses. And I would take a bus back and forth every day, sometimes multiple times a day. And so I got on the bus this one day on West Campus to go back to East Campus. And I had a horrible cold. So I really didn't want to sit down next to anyone. I just didn't want to be close to anyone. And so I was standing in the aisle, and this man who was an alum, gray hair, older guy, was standing in the aisle as well. And he looked with rather disdain down to the person sitting in the seat there. who happened to be African-American male. And he said, in my day, a man would have given his seat up for the woman, especially if she was not feeling well, clearly not feeling well.
Wait, is this Dad?
He said, I was raised to let the lady have the seat. And I said something about, well, I just don't want to get close to people, and I want to get them sick. And then what he said next shocked me. He said, but then, in my day, black people would have gotten up and walked to the back of the bus to let a white person sit down. And his tone of voice and his demeanor told me that he still believed that should be happening. I was shocked. I mean, this was 1997. This was not 1977 or 1967. I was shocked. Dumbfounded. But we in the church, we don't get off easy with this either. We have our seating charts. We like to sit in rows. Sit in rows, so we're sitting this way. We're facing the front and facing someone's back of the head. With the pastor sitting up front or standing up front and preaching out to people. We like to have pews that are fixed and in place. The pastor preaching from a lectern. Not everyone is like this, but just roll with me here. But this is a tendency from a fair number of people. Not everyone, but it is a generalization that I'm making. The pastor to preach from a lectern or podium. Sometimes people want the pastor to preach from a stage. Sometimes people want the pastor to sit in chairs up here rather than down here. Now, when churches move to chairs rather than pews, that's a little uncomfortable. What's going to happen with these chairs? They move around. So that's like, well, what's going to happen here? Now, can something weird happen, like the chairs be moved into a circle, which might indicate that we're all equal on the same plane? What happens when the pastor doesn't stay on the stage but is down here, which might indicate that the pastor's on the same level? Because the stage kind of indicates that the pastor has authority, which may not be a bad thing, but when the pastor comes down here, is kind of on the same level as having a conversation rather than preaching from authority. All kinds of things that we do in this space. And I've shared this with you one other time, but when we were in the other building, and it was at the end of the time that Chris was there, and right before I started, and if you remember, we had homeless folks camping on the porch. And we received a letter. It was anonymous. Oh, actually, I think there was a name to it. It was someone who had not, Chris didn't know the name. They hadn't been to the church in a while, apparently. And the letter said, well, you're letting in the gays, you got homeless people camping on the porch, and now you're getting rid of the pews. And you're getting chairs. The church is surely going to hell. I'll never be back. Some people have certain seating charts for the church and how they want the church to seat people. Where they want them seated, who they want seated, and how they want seated. So this is what Jesus is ripping apart when he tells these sons of Zebedee, yes, you will drink the cup I will drink, and yes, you will receive the baptism that I receive. Is this whole sense of seating charts can define who we as a society think is important or included or excluded or less than important. And then he says, but you have no idea what you're asking for or what you're talking about. Because what you think is important is not. What does Jesus' seating chart look like? It's based on a different ranking system than what we use. It goes something like this. Whoever wants to be great among you will be your servant. Whoever wants to be first among you will be slave of all. Because Jesus didn't come to be served, but rather to serve and to give his life to liberate many people. We may wonder, do we have places with such weird and mixed up seating charts around us? Yes, we do. And one is right here in Inglewood. It's called Cafe 180. We have a video. We'll just let Cafe 180 explain who they are.
Everyone has value and deserves a warm meal.
This is one place that I feel I could sit down with the mayor of Inglewood one day and somebody who just lives in a one-person apartment or somebody who just lives off the streets and all in the same building, all from all over walks of life.
My name is Tony Holloway. I've been coming to Cafe 180 for 2 years. I have chronic gout and I'm blind in my left eye. It's so painful sometimes I can't work like I used to.
My name is Julie, and my family and I come here on at least a weekly basis.
My name is Rucker Redfeather, and I am associated with the apprenticeship program that we used to have here.
My name is Christine Wagner, part of the advisory board.
My name is Joe Green, and I've been coming here for 4 years. I come here to eat.
Always, I run out of money a week before I get my next paycheck, so I have to eat. You can't cook anything if you're homeless. I come here, they help me out a lot, and I really needed this help.
It's not enough to, just give a handout, but it's important to treat people with dignity and provide, nutritious meals. And I think everybody deserves to come to a cafe like this and be treated, respectfully.
I knew I was working with good people who decided to dedicate their time to volunteer and help others as well. They taught me how generosity sort of works and to not give up on generosity.
It's more than just a meal, It's the people too,
I enjoy coming here. There's a good energy. I don't think of it as a community, but it is.
We want our kids to have as much exposure to the real world as they can. So meeting people in different walks of life who might have different struggles than they have, and to know that everyone has their own story and each story is valuable.
A lot of volunteer organizations, you're a little distance from the impact. And I think here, that's different. When you pay forward your lunch, you pay for the next person that comes in behind you. And so that's just, it's easy to tie the mission to the impact. So I think this is an organization that does that. And it's clear, it's visible, it's, right there.
So Cafe 180 is right down here on Broadway, right at King Soopers, down here on Broadway. It is a cafe, a restaurant, where you pay what you're able to pay. Those of us who can pay for a full meal, we pay for that. If you can pay more, then you're paying for someone, you're paying it forward, essentially, for someone who comes after you, who cannot pay. If you can pay a small amount of money, that's what you pay. If you can't pay, you can volunteer for an hour. It's treating people with dignity and opportunity. I love what the guy said there. He said that people here are teaching me how generosity works and not to give up on generosity. Pretty much that's what this whole piece in Mark that we're talking about is about. The wealthy man giving up possessions, being servant of all. And in the middle we have nestled this piece where Jesus is talking about his death and resurrection. This is what generosity is. The willingness to do all that we can and all that we are, pouring ourselves out into those around us and into the world, being everything that we can. And the guy said, I've never thought about this being community, but it is. There are places where Jesus talks about the banquet and that all are welcome and that all have a seat at the table. And it's only when we think in terms of absolute generosity and absolute invitation that that banquet in the kingdom of God is possible, where everyone has a seat at the table. Everyone, and that seat at the table is all on the same level, and all looks the same, and all is the same. And there is no number on the table, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is no head table marked off. All the tables are marked, beloved children of God. And you are loved. So welcome, my friends, to the banquet. Amen. At this time, Tanya's going to share some music with us.
Yeah, I'm gonna play today, and it's gonna be the old classical music. It's Vals by Griboyedov. But before that, I just would like to share a few words of my expression of today's sermons. By the way, it's really nice. And when we read in that verse in the beginning that Peter and mother of Peter and John asked to be seated their sons on the right and left side. But literally it seems like it doesn't happen. But I just remember that Jacob, it seems like he died first among all the apostles. And John died the last. It's kind of on the left and right side of Jesus. Yeah, it just thought came to my mind. Okay, Vals by Griboyedov.